Friends, tonight I'll be talking about the Greens and I'll be talking about our Australian Labor Party. I'll be talking about why the Greens have been popular in Melbourne and I'll be talking about how that can change. Importantly, I'll be talking tonight about the dangers that the Greens present. We need to win back Melbourne for Labor and we need to do it now. Most importantly, we'll be talking tonight about how that can happen. There was one major reason that I joined the Labor Party, and that reason was the Liberal Party. I have John Howard and his government to thank for one thing, and that is the inspiration I needed to join the ALP. Every day since then, the Conservatives have given me more reasons to rail against them. Today, Tony Abbott is relentlessly and opportunistically inflaming and exploiting the concerns of Australians, however unfounded they may be, thus continuing a shameless Conservative tradition better than most Liberal leaders have before him. Only Labor can protect the Australian people from the Liberal Party. And the challenge of the Greens, stripped back, is a threat to Labor's ability to be the champion for the Australian people. Today we mark the beginning of our answer to that threat. Friends, the next federal election will be the most crucial election that Labor has ever faced in the seat of Melbourne. In spite of the Greens' campaign spend of over $1 million, the all-important net result hadn't shifted all that much, and it was a similar result for Ellen Sandell in the seat of Melbourne at the last state election. Having spent a similar amount to Adam Bandt taking on Labor's Jennifer Canis, Sandell still only scraped over the line by a couple of hundred votes. For all their talk, the Greens haven't put a terminal nail in the coffin of Labor here in Melbourne. With the right campaign and the right candidate, Adam Bandt will be beaten at the next federal election. This seat is winnable for Labor. My campaign will be a positive and inspiring campaign, reasserting that the collective achievements of the Australian progressive movement over the last 120 years are a function of Labor's ability to secure and retain government. But on the other side of that coin, I will be prepared to confront the Greens directly. My campaign will tell the people of Melbourne that Labor will fight for meaningful action on climate change, that we will fight to secure a clean energy future for our children, but that the only way to secure lasting reform is with a Labor majority. We must explain to the people of Melbourne we have a unique chance at the next election to remove the Liberal government after one term. It's important to recognise that however bad it gets for the Liberals, the next election will be tight, and especially so if Malcolm Turnbull is the Prime Minister before the election. One seat could make all the difference. Melbourne's choice could make all the difference between enduring progressive reform of a majority-shortened government or another minority Labor government. Forced then to pursue reform the Greens way, the way that has just seen Labor governments lose all our hard-won reforms. Our families and loved ones are the most important things in all our lives, regardless of their sexuality. On this basis, it's hardly surprising that same-sex couples feel so strongly about their current exclusion from the institution of marriage. Marriage is a legal institution before it is a religious institution. Therefore, it falls within the authority of the Parliament to determine its meaning. It is the responsibility of Parliament to ensure equality of all its citizens before the law. The current exclusion, therefore, is an abject failure in this responsibility. It is also a concerning fact that many same-sex couples who have had to endure the loss of a partner through accident or ill health run into enormous difficulties when dealing with their partner's will or when dealing with insurance benefits, and all because they weren't legally married. In fact, many same-sex couples miss out on what's rightfully theirs and what their partner would have wanted them to have, because our antiquated laws have not kept up with what they needed and what is right. Without any shadow of a doubt, it's time for that to change. As many of us here know, you don't have to be gay to understand that this deeply meaningful social institution is about equal participation in the activity, expression, security and integrity of marriage. Any alternative to marriage, in my opinion, simply offers the insult of formal equivalency without substantive equality. The last Labor government has a record of delivering for the LGBTI community. We repealed over 85 laws where gay people face discrimination in areas such as tax, social security, health and many more. And in Bill Shorten we have a Labor leader who vocally supports amending the Marriage Act. Despite our party's history of grappling with the issue of asylum seekers, Labor cannot cut through in this electorate. without its candidate taking a compelling position. The contribution that migration has had to Australia needs to be properly acknowledged. We are a nation built on immigration. The fabric of Australian society is richer from the experience of migration, especially with the contributions of those Australians who came here as refugees. The issue of those seeking asylum in Australia is complex. Our current estimates are that there are some 7 million people around the world who are seeking permanent asylum. Australia's humanitarian program is currently growing from 13,750 to around 18,500 places. But even if we offered 100,000 places, which no political party advocates, mind you, we would be still saying no to millions of worthy refugees. This is the dilemma which underpins this particular area of public policy. Precisely because of this complex dilemma, before we discuss the measures Australia takes in order to reduce the sum of global misery, we need to be very clear about our values. Values that drive modern Labor are compassion, fairness and generosity, underpinned by a fundamental maxim that as a country we should not harm people. At the next federal election, we need a Labor candidate in Melbourne who is prepared to commit to real action on this issue. We need someone with credibility on delivering for the asylum seeker community here in the electorate. And we need a candidate who will commit to real change. Friends, since being in office, I've convened the Refugee and Asylum Seeker Roundtable, bringing together individuals and groups who support asylum seekers. And they're all doing it because they're working with me to achieve real change. We now have a register of supporters in the City of Melbourne, easily accessible by those who need it, and importantly, this group has given me ideas about what I can do as a local politician to help the refugee and asylum seeker communities locally. Last year we were talking about the difficulties faced by newly arrived refugees finding work in Melbourne. Many were overqualified for the jobs they were able to quickly start, and many had language and other difficulties to overcome. In response to this, and after months of work, I recently launched the African Employment Initiative, fully funded by the City of Melbourne, to run over 3 years. Friends, this program will make it easier for newly arrived refugees from African communities in Melbourne to find work. A key part of this program is also empowering women in the community and encouraging community participation. And that's one of the reasons that this program is being run through the community-driven Melbourne Employment Forum. It's not enough for Labor's candidate to say that they care about asylum seekers. Our candidate also needs to be able to point to actual, genuine support for these communities. We are no longer in a position where we can risk an unknown candidate. This campaign needs a candidate that knows the city, someone who lives and breathes Melbourne. We need a candidate who already has formed strong community connections. We need a candidate who the community is intrinsically connected with. Friends, I present myself to you as a person who has been a proud member of the Australian Labor Party for 13 years, a Melbourne resident for 10 years and is a serving City of Melbourne councillor. Within the Labor Party, I've served on 3 policy committees and as president of the Carlton branch here in Melbourne. I've worked on federal campaigns in 2004 and 2007, both times for female candidates. I come to this election as the only candidate with experience in public office, presiding over a portfolio with a budget of around $130 million a year and working with a council budget of nearly $500 million. I bring a media presence and a solid experience of working both in the media and with it. I'm the only candidate who has beaten the Greens in an election for public office and who continues to beat them week to week, month to month, and I will beat them again. My connections in Melbourne are vast, especially within the progressive movement, but also in the business community. But most importantly, I'm the only candidate who has delivered for the community and will continue to deliver for the community right across Melbourne. I know what it's like to be poor. I understand the importance of education now, working in a senior role with Australia's largest university. And I care about people who have had to flee their homes, and I want to see a fairer Australia in which people are allowed to marry their loved ones of the same gender. I'll run a campaign that takes the people of Melbourne into our confidence as we have a conversation about how we can best advance the causes we so genuinely believe in and why Labor remains the greatest force for change and progress and the architect of our modern prosperity. I'll run a campaign that makes people realise that when they vote Green they're selling out, that they're outsourcing their conscience to cheap talk when the stakes are too high for them to do that. While the planet gets ever closer to runaway climate change, gay couples are waiting to be able to legally commit to each other. And asylum seekers are being tortured and left to languish under real threat of murder and persecution, while Labor can move things in the right direction. The winning candidate, who will go on to contest Adam Bandt at the next federal election, will need to be bold. They will need to be bold enough to tackle the hard issues for Labor with real solutions to them. They will need to be bold enough to be inclusive in their campaigning and make real commitments on the issues most prominent in the minds of Melbourne voters. Friends, that's why, if I'm Labor's candidate for Melbourne, I will commit to joining with Tanya Plibersek in moving the party to legislate for gay marriage in the first term of the next Labor government, and to support her in a private member's bill to amend the Marriage Act so that same-sex marriage is made legal. I will also immediately call for a Royal Commission into offshore detention and ensure that its terms enable the exposure of the treatment of asylum seekers in our offshore facilities. Friends, only a Labor government can increase funding to our universities, as the Gillard government did to the tune of $350 million in 2013. Only a Labor government will act on the environment, like we did when we protected Kakadu, when we protected the Great Barrier Reef, when we signed the Kyoto Protocol, and when we took the Japanese to the World Court for whaling in the Southern Ocean. I will present a Labor Party as what it really is at its core. Labor is a party of values that has delivered, and has delivered more than any other party and better than the Greens could ever hope to. It's Labor that delivered better schools, the National Broadband Network, disability care and action on climate change. We abolished work choices. We introduced 1,300 extra GPs during our last government, trades training centres, dental care reforms and above all, a strong economy, because friends, this is Labor. And with me as Labor's candidate for Melbourne, our call for a Royal Commission into the treatment of asylum seekers in detention will be loud, and it will be strong, and marriage equality will be a reality. With your support, Labor's bid to win Melbourne back from the Greens will be unlike anything we've seen before. I'm counting on you to back my campaign to be Labor's federal candidate for Melbourne. Thank you.